And welcome back, students. Let's get into our next lesson on exception handling basics. Today we're going to discuss throwing exceptions. So getting started, in our previous lesson, an exception was thrown by the next int method if a non-integer was entered. Remember, we could enter, for example, a double or a char or a string, and we would technically throw an input mismatch exception. Now, we did not write the method that threw the exception. We were responsible only technically for catching and handling any exceptions. For many programs, this is really all that's necessary. You don't have to go and define every little thing like, hey, it's an input mismatch, boom, handle it with just the input mismatch call. Or, we have other ones like divide by zero. We can handle those because those exceptions are already written in Java. However, it's also possible for your own code to throw the exception. So to do this, we're going to use a throw statement inside the try block in the format throw, new exception, and then just some kind of string describing the exception. So the following example is from Dance Lesson 2 and consists of a try block with throw statements included. The setting for the program in this case is a dance lesson. The program will check to see if there are no men or women, in which case the lesson is canceled. Otherwise, the number of dance partners is computed. And here's the code right here. So here I have my try statement. So it says if men is equal to 0 and women is equal to 0, throw a new exception, lesson is canceled, no students. Also if men equals 0, throw a new exception, lesson is canceled, no men. Also if women equals 0, throw a new exception, lesson is canceled, no women. All right. Then of course we have our if and our else here, which simply just each man must dance with women, men, etc. So pretty much ever has to be paired with somebody. Obviously, there are other ways you could kind of handle your if-else's here, but this is a real quick and easy example. So you'll notice that the try block had 3 throw statements. We had a throw new exception, lesson is canceled, no students. Throw new exception, lesson is canceled, no men. And throw new exception, lesson is canceled, no women. All right, it's broken down into those 3 categories because that's the way that we want it to be. The value thrown then is an argument to the throw operator and is always an object of some exception class. The execution of a throw statement, therefore, is called throwing an exception. So the syntax, throw new exception class name, possibly some arguments. All right. When we look at the syntax, the throw statement is executed. Therefore, the execution of the surrounding try block is stopped. And normally, control is then transferred to that of a catch block. So once it hits that throw statement, boop, jump out of the try block, go right to the catch block. The code in the catch block is executed next. So example, throw an exception, division by 0. Now, let's look at the get message method. Every exception has a string instance variable that contains some message, which typically identifies the reason for the exception. For example, if the exception is thrown as follows, throw new exception string argument, then the string given as an argument to the constructor exception is used as the value of the string instance variable. If the object is called e, then the method call e.getMessage returns the string. And we've seen this already, the e.getMessage. So if you before wondered what is that, this is where this is coming from. It's coming from that getMessage call. So here's another example. Suppose the following throw statement is executed in a try block. Throw a new exception, input must be positive. And suppose the following is a catch block immediately following the try block. Catch exception E, system.out.println e.getMessage, system.out.println program aborted, system.out.0. In this case, the method call e.getMessage returns the string, input must be positive. All right, let's look at an example of exception handling. In our class dance lesson, it contains a simple program that might, by some stretch of imagination, be used at a dance studio. This program does not use exception handling, and you would not normally use exception handling for anything this simple. The setting for use of the program, of course, is a dance lesson, as we already mentioned, and what the program does is simply checks to see if there are more men than women or more women than men. Then announces how many partners each man or woman will have. The exceptional case is when there's no men, or no women, or both. In that exceptional case, the dance lesson is canceled. So I'm going to pop over to Eclipse real quick here. And look at our original dance lesson right here. And you can see it's a very simple program, just has a scanner, keep our system in, enter the number of males, enter the number of females, and then it goes to check to see if there is any instance of 0. So if men is 0 and women is 0, if men is 0, or if women is 0. And you can see in each one of those, lesson is canceled, no men, system exit 0, lesson is canceled, no women, system exit 0, and of course, no students, system exit 0. Then down here, you have another if else, which just looks to see pretty much, oh, hey, look, there is people. Here it is. All right, this is a very simple example, but obviously we can apply this to more complex examples. Now, in our dance lesson 2, in the notes, you'll see that the program is rewritten using exception handling. Again, this is a very simple example, but it helps to demonstrate how exception handling can work. The non-exceptional cases go inside the try block, and the try block checks for the exceptional cases. The exceptional cases are not handled in the try block, but if detected, they're signaled by throwing an exception. The 3 lines taken from the inside the multi-if-else statement that we had before are the code for the throwing an exception. Throw an exception, lesson is canceled, no students. Throw a new exception, lesson is canceled, no men. And throw a new exception, lesson is canceled, no women. So if we look at dance lesson 2, you can see right here is that if-else statement. So rather than putting those commands that we had before, here with the system exit 0, we now have them right here, throw a new exception. All right? And you can see down here, what that does, it says throw a new exception. Here's the string right here. So it's going to output the string, because it's a string message is equal to get message, output the string. Here's our system exit 0. So it's kind of saving us having to write system exit 0 each time. Now, if the program does not encounter an exceptional case, then obviously none of these statements that throw an exception executed. And we can see that here. All right, it's just like before. Boom. If none of these are true, it's going to go down here to check these 2 statements. If women is greater than men, or pretty much else, which means men has to be greater than equal to women. In that case, we don't really need to know what happens when an exception is thrown, because it doesn't matter to us. So if no exception is thrown, then the code in the section labeled catch block is skipped, and the program proceeds to the last statement, which just happens to output begin lesson. And you'll notice that begin lesson is right here, and it's also here in our original dance program as well. Now, let's see what happens with the exceptional cases. And the reason why we want to use a try-catch here is for these exceptional cases. If the number of men or the number of women is 0 or both, that is an exceptional case in this program and results in an exception being thrown. So to make things more concrete, let's just say that the number of men is 0, but the number of women is not 0. It could be 5, 10, 15, whatever. In that case, the following statement is executed, which is how Java throws an exception. Throw a new exception, lesson is canceled, no men. So let's analyze what this throw statement actually means. The following is invocation then of a constructor for the class exception, which is in the standard Java package java.lang. New exception, lesson is canceled, no men. The created exception object is not assigned actually to a variable, but rather is used as kind of an anonymous argument to the throw operator. Now, to make it look more like a unitary operator, you can write it technically with parentheses around the argument as follows. Throw, parentheses, new exception, quote, parentheses, quote, lesson is canceled, no men, quote, parentheses, parentheses. Now, although it's perfectly legal and sensible to include these extra parentheses, nobody really includes them because it's understood that this right here is the same as what we have on that previous slide. Just throw new exception. All right, so throw exception and then it'll be it. Because, again, this is right here is explicit, whereas the way we're doing it is a little bit more of an implied version. And Java can handle that just fine. Now, let's continue to discuss what it means to understand throwing. So to understand this process of throwing, you pretty much need to know 2 things. First, what is this exception class that we've been discussing? And 2, what does the throw operator do with the exception object? So once you throw it, what's it doing? Well, the exception class is another class from the standard Java package java.lang. As we've already seen, the class exception has a constructor that takes a single string argument, and we can define what that string is. Now, the exception object created stores the string argument in a private instance variable. Remember, if it's private, if we remember our different security levels, non-accessible. We don't necessarily need to access that private instance variable, we just have to access the methods it uses. And as you will see later on, this string argument can be retrieved from the exception object. So there's actually things that we can do as we get into manipulating some of the different things here. Now the throw operator causes a change in the flow of control and delivers the exception object to a suitable place, as we're about to explain. When the throw operator is executed, the try block ends immediately and control passes to the following catch block. So that's what we mean when we're talking about a change in the flow of control. It's not going to finish executing out the entire try block. No, when it throws that exception, it stops the try block and jumps out of it and into the catch block. So if it helps, you can kind of draw an analogy between the execution of a throw operator and a try block and the execution of a break statement and a loop or a switch statement. It's kind of functioning in a similar kind of train of thought. Remember with a break, if you put a break in like a loop, for example, it stops the loop wherever it's at and jumps out of it. It doesn't try to finish the rest of the code. And even if there's something outside of it, it will jump right out of that loop and then the loop's done. Same thing's kind of working here. Now, when control is transferred to the catch block, the exception object that is thrown is plugged in for the catch block parameter e. So the expression e.getMessage returns the string, lesson is canceled, no men. The method getMessage of the class exception is an accessor method that retrieves the string in the private instance variable of the exception object. That is, the string is used as an argument to the exception constructor. All right, and that's going to wrap it up for today, folks. Hopefully that has given you a little bit more insight on how to use the throw command, but we will be doing more with exceptions and handling in this chapter. So until the next time.